I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I decided to watch the new Israeli Netflix series Black Space. It initially caught me off guard and shocked me a bit. Should it be on your watch list? An ordinary morning at a high school turns into a nightmare when anonymous figures in masks commit a massacre, leaving 4 dead students. Detectives work to uncover the perpetrators as the suspect list keeps mounting. There's a warning that comes before each episode, and it is certainly warranted. The content is pretty jarring and distressing. The crime that the show revolves around is a school shooting, and the series dives right in within the first couple of minutes. Also, within the first couple of minutes, we're introduced to the main protagonist to the story, which is Davidi. He is a detective who happened to just be right near the school when the shooting started. So obviously the trauma of the crime affects everybody that's involved, and we see it drastically affect Davidi. But the show uncovers that it's not just this recent trauma that causes a rise in personal issues for him. I like that it becomes complex in the emotional realm, and we see a bunch of complications that arise because of Davidi's mindset and his behaviors. There are also a lot of suspects that begin to be revealed, and the show makes a lot of them seem like they could be the perpetrators. This helps to keep us guessing as the mystery builds. The reason for the series title of Black Space is that there is an app and a website that a large portion of the students are on. It allows users to send anonymous messages to a message board, and then after about 30 seconds, they disappear. Well, the messages disappear, not the users. I mean, if that happened, come on, the whole show would just take on this whole different direction. It'd be like Black Mirror. The app then allows for a lot of chatter to happen, which raises suspicions for us, but sometimes without much context, and certainly because there aren't any names attached to the messages. And there are more than a handful of characters that get focus in this, and a lot of them are shady and they're aggravating, which is exactly how they're meant to appear to keep the shroud of disbelief around them. Something that adds to the drama and the tension of the show is the behaviors of the cops and the school faculty. I mean, they are frustrating because they just don't seem to help any of the situations. It seems like they mainly work to complicate everything. And there are so many twists and turns. I mean, misdirects and suspicions change many times, and that then adds a lot of intrigue to the show. And it's great to think that you have honed in on a suspect based on their words or actions to only have it shot down because of some plausible alibi or explanation. Now, despite the amount of different suspicions that are raised, the show does feel a little dragged out to me. During the 8 episodes, I began to feel a lower sense of urgency to solving the crimes because the character dramas were just taking a lot of the focus. Each of the episodes are around 45 minutes in length, and I was engaged the whole time. It just felt that the progress was happening more slowly than it really needed to. And the characters are all very complex and layered, and I think almost all of them are pretty mysterious the entire way through the show. Some of this is to maintain the suspense, but it also makes several of them feel shallow and maybe even a little bit bland. Their brooding makes sense, especially given what they have experienced, but motivations are harder to accept when we don't have a good connection with the players. There's also some teen angst that comes through, but it's kind of to be expected as we're watching an emotional upheaval play out amongst all the students following this trauma. Something odd that stood out to me is that there's this weird relationship between a girl and her brother, and I don't think it's totally explored or even explained. It's off-putting and strange, but I think it would be more weighty and maybe even more impactful or emotional if there was development put to it. The fractured or damaged relationships that we watch in the aftermath do make sense, but I wish we also got to see just a little bit more healing take place. I mean, the tone remains pretty dark and bleak throughout the entire show. There are glimpses of hope and even healing, but I'm not sure it's enough to overcome any of the darkness that covers the show in shadows. When we get towards the end of the show, the urgency really does begin to increase, and I felt just this almost race against time. And I like that because it amped up the excitement and it breathed just a new bit of life into the show. Now, the end had some resolution, but it also felt like a lot of the French films that I've seen. I mean, it just ended. There was a bit of an abruptness for me, and it didn't ruin the story, but it did feel odd. And also, I really hope that this is only one season. I mean, there's no reason to carry it on further, short of them following just a completely different storyline. And I might be okay with that because I think there is more that we can see from Davidi and his colleagues. So overall, this was an engaging and interesting mystery. I like the suspense that's built and really appreciate how the show is able to continuously shift the focus from suspect to suspect, which then keeps us guessing. I do think it could have been tightened up in spots to keep the urgency, and I also could have done with more overall character development. I enjoyed the main character of Davidi and his progression, which allows us to get into his head even if we may not like him some of the time. There's no sex or nudity, a bunch of profanity, and a lot of traumatic violence. I give Black Space 3 out of 5 couches. So what are you watching right now? I'd love to hear what you're binging in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.